Good afternoon from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Training Center in Doral or Miami, Florida. I'm Bill Gustin, the oldest guy in the room, and I'm with the youngest guy in the room, at least here, our Lieutenant Matt Livingstone from Miami-Dade Engine 14. We've got Captain Mike Dugan, who doesn't need any introduction. Nick Salameh, who I have been a student of for quite some time. And I read his articles and I actually rip them out of the magazine and stick them on my bulletin board. Professor Dave Walsh, and then two friends of mine from the metropolitan Cincinnati area, Chief Ed Myers and Captain Cody Martin. And before we go any further, let's thank our friends at Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. Miami-Dade just changed our hose loads for our cross lays, and we got to have hose that is inherently kink resistance. And I say this every one of these sessions: take the key challenge, try to kink key hose. You can't kink it. And right now it's being dragged across that pavement day after day. If you want to put your equipment to the test, give it to Recruit Trading. So Chief Myers and Captain Martin, can you tell a little bit about yourself? And although I've asked you to participate in our discussion on hostile fire events, our boss, our editor-in-chief, Bobby Halton, is all about helping our brothers in the fire service, because that's who we are and that's what we do. So if you want to go ahead and take it from here, fellas, and I'll just let you introduce yourself and explain what your purpose is.
Good, Cody. I'm Captain Cody Martin, captain here at Goshen on Unit 3. Been at Goshen for just over 10 years now. As Captain Gustin mentioned, we recently had a tornado that struck our main station, Station 18, and then our local township. So that's just something that we've been working through day by day, and we're here to talk a little bit about that as well with Chief Myers.
My name's Ed Myers. Prior to coming to Goshen, I worked just shy of 20 years at the city of Wilmington, northeast of here. Pretty busy, all-career department. Come down here to work for Chief Pegram 3 years ago as the deputy chief. And when Steve retired back in January, I took over as the chief here just a little over 6 months ago.
Okay, and then so we're mutual friends of Steve Pegram. And for those of you that have never watched it, Steve's keynote address at FDIC a number of years ago had to do with encouraging people to donate their organs, to be register as an organ donor because of his wife Molly. And I guarantee you, there will not be a dry eye in the house when you see that presentation. So do you have some kind of pictures or something you can show our viewers the extent of the destruction there? Holy shit.
Here you go.
Oh, man.
Now, if you look back behind is the station, of course.
Yes.
So
God,
go ahead, Bill.
And no fatalities?
No fatalities. Very fortunate. We have had, I believe, 4 injuries total, none significant. So we're very, very blessed. Actually, Captain Martin was in the station when it hit, along with our crew.
Wow. And it's amazing that it spared the radio antenna. Man, it took that station.
That was currently under construction. It is twisted a little bit. But yeah, it spared some of the stuff around the station.
Any fires or gas leaks as a result of this?
Numerous gas leaks. No fires. And actually the one at the station there got sheared off. So we had to wait for that to be addressed. And that created another problem because when the energy company cut the gas off, it cut the gas off to the power generators to the cell towers. So we lost cell phone coverage as well.
Oh, did you lose any apparatus?
No, we lost the door off an engine, and they got a bunch of bumps and bruises, but other than that, everything's still in service.
Right.
And how about the families of your personnel in their homes?
We had one that basically lost everything that's just adjacent to the firehouse. You can see in that first picture, he's one of our part-time guys. That's a career guy for a neighboring department south of us.
Wow.
It's the one with the roof that's still on it, but it did a significant amount of damage to that home. Other than that, all the other guys had minor damage. Families are all okay.
Well, like I said, I've gone through this, and it's not just your home, it's your neighborhood, your church, your store, your neighbors, and then maneuvering the apparatus at nights. Yeah, pray for Goshen, Ohio. And you can't get a nice, more quiet middle America town. So my heart really goes out to you. If our viewers wanted to help you, your department and the members of your fire department family and their families, is there anything that they can do?
Yes, so we've been overwhelmed with the support. It's been a blessing, and then it's just good to see everybody come together to be able to go after the common goal of just recovering and doing what's best for the people. But we've had a number of different departments wanted to donate to our local. So right there, you see on your screen, that's the QR code for our IAFF local. I also am our local union president as well. So here to represent them as well. But that's the QR code for that. And then there's also been a fund set up through it's Connect Claremont. They're a local nonprofit organization within our county that people can donate funds to as well. And then 100% of the proceeds from that go to Goshen to support the recovery efforts. But we've had a number of people donate, and we're distributing those funds. We're helping John out, one of our part-time guys. He's career at another department in the county. We've helped him, and then some other local residents, and then just different township employees that have been affected by the tornado. We've distributed funds, bought items, and whatnot to help them as well.
Okay. Captain Mike.
Yes, sir.
We got a bit of news here about one of our regular panelists that is not on today. We gave everybody the month off, and that is our dear friend from Oakland, California, Captain Daryl Liggins. And I understand he did retire from the Oakland Fire Department. Did I understand that correctly, Captain Mike?
That's the email I got.
Well, Daryl, if you're watching, and I know you are, Daryl, I know you are. So God bless you, man. And hey, we like old retired guys on the.
Now, I can't do the Star Trek finger thing, Bill, but I love the Star Trek saying, and I say that to all my retired friends. You have to do the Star Trek retirement, which is live long and prosper. One of my friends, Henry Winters, his father-in-law, was the oldest living FDNY retiree, a battalion chief who lived to 104. And I said, I just want that title for one day, the oldest living FDNY retiree. 104 is a nice, we still got to write the check to that old son of a gun? Yeah. Yes, you do.
And Professor Walsh, I want to give you a shout out and kudos for the wonderful thing that you did, or things that you did during the COVID lockdown, where firefighters, many of them volunteer, were hesitant to get together for drills and meetings. And you kept us all with our heads in the job, by, I think it was a weekly bulletins and an examination of different aspects of fire dynamics, of which I printed every one of those as well. You and Nick's. In fact, you and Nick are, I consider you to be right up there at the top shelf when it comes to people that can not only understand fire dynamics, but a lot of people can understand it, but explain it in terms that the rest of us can understand. That's the difference. So Dave, thank you for coming on board. I really haven't spoken to you lately. You want us to give us a little update on what you're doing in terms of continuing ed?
Like everybody, just keeping the head in the game. Big fan of the UL University, all their online courses, which, you know, they're doing great stuff, and they put it out in a very, like you said, easy to understand, visualize, comprehend, and then appreciate at 3 o'clock in the morning. We've been working here in New York State on some modern fire course that you reviewed for us. Thank you. And Captain Chin also reviewed, trying to get that out to all our people in New York State, getting them up to speed, showing them that, you know, today's fires isn't necessarily yesterday's fires, and what's changed. So that's been kind of interesting and kind of exciting, real exciting.
I'm so proud of my department. My department has sent 2 groups of about 10 people each to the UL Fire Dynamics Boot Camp. I believe that's what you call it, Matt, outside of Philadelphia. And young, sharp, hungry people, not old buzzards like me, young, sharp, knowledge hungry, motivated firefighters and a few lieutenants, but mostly firefighters that we can tell are upwardly mobile. And I always say, I guess it was because of my dad, 33 years on the Chicago Fire Department. And he taught me, when he knew that I was going to become a firefighter, he taught me very early, before I was even on the job, Bill, don't be afraid to give a fire a dash from the outside if your interior attack is delayed. Now, I would bring that up at, for instance, FDIC in the 90s, and you would swear that I just insulted some people's mamas because they were disgusted to hear that. Well, you know, there's my dad. He's up in heaven now, but he's a visionary. He was a visionary. He gets it. And the thing is, Professor Walsh, Captain Mike, to a lesser extent, Nick, we're old. It starts with a B, but we're old. Why do we get it? Why do we get it? And so many other guys that are old or in the fire service don't get it. And that's a rhetorical question. In fact, I'm going to answer it. Because the old timers did witness getting steam burns and did witness fire being pushed. Why? I would bet my next 3 paychecks, almost every one of those circumstances, the stream applied from the outside was a fog stream. And it does indeed. Look at Madrakowski's examination of pushing fire. And he explains. And then you've got another one on the amount of air that it entrains, and also rotating a solid or straight stream moves just about as much air. So we get it. And Nick, your article that you wrote in March 2020, it was called Differentiating Fire Phenomena. Is that right?
Fireground phenomena, correct.
Yeah, and Nick, that's going to be the title of our hangout today. Differentiating fireground phenomena. And you did such a great job with that. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, sir?
Thank you. Yes, Nick Salameh. I born and raised in the Fairfax County, Virginia, Northern Virginia area. Became a volunteer for about 5 years with Fairfax County Fire and Rescue in Virginia, and then became paid after that. Spent 31 years with the Arlington County, Virginia Fire Department, home of the Pentagon, and retired back in 2017 with 31 years, and have been kind of keeping the passion alive, doing different opportunities. Sorry, my phone's just ringing there.
It's all right, brother. This is informal. To what? Get it.
Been keeping the passion alive. I help to run the Facebook side of SBSK, Stop Believing, Start Knowing, where we talk a lot about the modern science and push the UL studies and the NIST studies. Started writing some articles back in 2016. After I retired, I pushed out a whole bunch more to fire engineering. Really appreciate the opportunities they've given me. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to join you guys at the table here virtually. But just trying to kind of, you walk away with 30 plus years of service and you want to find some way to give that back, and my way has been pretty much through the web, educational web pages and having discussions online. We do a lot at SBSK of posting video, posting still pictures, talking about what's going on, getting people to focus on the incident, not so much the folks that are involved in the incident themselves, and just encouraging those healthy dialogues to talk about, what we know about it, what we can do about it, and some of those tactical considerations to take into consideration that UL and NIST have pushed out for us.
Okay, we're going to start with our panel here, and I'm going to give my friend here, Matt, a plug. He invented this. This is the LHASP. It is a device that goes between the male and female couplings to suspend a hose line in the event of a catastrophic failure of a standpipe. We've done it from the roof of a 25-story building. It works extremely well. Modern fire hose, especially key hose, has, did I say that right? Key hose, yes, has incredible pull-out strength, where we know that the weak link would be where the hose itself is attached to the coupling or shank with the expansion ring. Incredible strength. So if you have a high quality hose, you only have to suspend it at one point. Like I said, we've done it from a 25-story building. Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay.
And do you have a lesson learned about a hostile fire event?
I had with a new crew of mine in city of South Miami there. Came in as a building fire, and the address right away popped in our heads as basically 1 block over from the station. Bay doors opened up, and I could see a column of black smoke coming up over the metro rail there, and we knew it was going to be a fighter. We got around the corner just enough time to get our gear on, and it's a strip mall. It's actually, what we found out later, it's 2 strip malls, and in between the strip mall is about a 25-foot section that used to have like park benches and a breezeway all pavered out. Well, what they did, they put gates on it with a lock and made that a florist shop, and they built a roof over the top of it and connected the two between the 2 buildings there. So they had an active running florist shop. A surge in the power line hit. Not sure what caused any of that, but it caught the back half where the coolers and everything are on the florist shop. Obviously, seeing that it vented through the backside of the florist shop, it was clear walking in. We used the master key, popped the locks off, and shout out to my crew real quick is Rob Martinez and tailboard, and my other tailboard, Jimmy Marino, and the driver is a veteran driver, Ralph Leva. We pulled up, and this fire was ripping out the Charlie side and up into the roof. What we didn't realize, after we cut it, opened up the gates, Battalion 8 made arrival. I gave them the thumbs up that we were moving in. transfer command face to face. As we're going in, the back part of the roof, not being obviously built to code because it was between two buildings and it was a walkway, it was just 2x4s. And the metal sheeting and everything had already burned up. The 2x4s came down. As it came down, it was like a piston.
Yeah. Yeah.
It pushed all that, it was clear going in, and it pushed all that smoke, fire, debris, everything came coming at us, like a ventilation fan blowing it straight at us. Everything came out. We put our heads down. It wrapped us in the smoke and the fire. And as quick as it came, it went away, but there was stuff everywhere. But it told me right then, the rest of the stuff is obviously not built to code. So we only went in about probably 10, 15 feet. And we were able to knock it down. And we had incoming crew come to the backside and, finish off anything we couldn't see. By the time it was done, 3/4 of that roof had already collapsed. And we had no clue. So you never know about these construction, because we could have been deep inside there.
Well, we're in Miami, so we have different building codes here. We've got the Tegucigalpa, we've got the Santo Domingo building code. We've got them all.
Yeah.
And some of them are quite creative. Captain Mike and I have discussed this before. When we talk about a collapse, it's not just getting hit by the building. It's getting hit by radiant heat. And we had a floor collapse on us in a wood frame house that collapsed into the basement, and we've experienced the same thing. Thank God the chief had pulled us out. God rest his soul. And that floor came down, and it was like a big friggin' piston, and blew the gases out, fireballs out the doors and the windows. Chief Myers, Captain Martin, any memorable experiences with something that you didn't expect that caught you off guard?
Good. Yeah, I mean, I've had the floor collapse underneath me myself. Actually, we had a lightning strike. It's when the newer construction started to come around with the I-beam construction, and we're making entry. The lightning struck the house. We're on scene within like 6 minutes. We made entry into the home, and we're making our way through the kitchen and noticed an odd greenish blue flame coming out of the cold air returns. Well, by that time, we felt the floor start to give way. So we scooted on into the dining room and eventually found the basement door where the fire was actually at. Once we got down there, got the fire extinguished, and got to look, and if it wasn't for the tile and the concrete board, we'd been in a basement sort of similar to the Squirrel's Nest fire. There was some mistakes there, and not a proper 360 was done. Of course, this was prior to the Squirrel's Nest fire, where it wasn't so important back then. But that was definitely a lesson learned, because there was 6 or 7 burnt almost completely the way through it.
Chief, if I
With the
could,
grace of God, we're here today.
the Squirrel's Nest, is that the Coleraine Township?
Yes, sir. Coleraine. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, which is it should be in everybody's vocabulary. And
It should be.
yes, it should be. And so you're not going to tell us what department you were on before you went to Goshen?
Goshen. I was with the city of Wilmington, which is about 30 minutes northeast of here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you've seen plenty of work. So
Yeah, over the years, that's a small, busy, all-career department. It's busy.
you know it, man. Yeah. Right. Professor Walsh, sir,
Yes, sir.
you have some lessons that you can pass on. You and I, we talked about that incident with my dad where there was no fire in the enclosure. And yet when they forced open, it was full of gases that it rapidly ignited. I think it was more of a deflagration than it was an explosion. But I remember as a little kid, my dad came home and his face was redder than a baboon's ass. Eyebrows are all gone. And remember you and I talked about this because I didn't fully understand the dynamics behind it, but they had a fire in a bar and they had the kegs were in a enclosure, refrigerated, that were made out of the structural insulated panels. And the fire was in the bar, but the gases migrated into this enclosure. And I never really did understand. The gases collected in there and they did ignite and rapidly expand, but there was no fire in there and there wasn't any fire damage. Did you have you ever heard or seen of anything like that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that stuff. It seems like as we go kind of in a cycle, you look back in the books a while ago, smoke explosions were in all the books, and it kind of seemed like they faded over the horizon. Then along came NIST and UL that started telling us, hey guys, smoke is fuel. You know, and then I think it's you that came up with that great phrase that I repeat and give you credit for. Every time you see smoke, ask yourself, why isn't it burning? You know, what part of the fire tetrahedron is missing? Now, you know, sometimes we always think of backdraft. So, okay, it's oxygen starved. But how about when it's got the oxygen and it's got the fuel? How about if it's just missing that little ignition source? You know, so there's so many potential situations where that smoke can turn around and ignite. And, you know, you take your phrase, why isn't that smoke burning? Then I always kind of add on part B and what's going to happen if that smoke does ignite.
Right. Nick, would you please make the distinction, and I don't know if it's a clear line of demarcation, between backdrafts and smoke explosions?
So the distinction is that they're pretty close, and it's really hard to kind of figure out. In fact, one of the reasons I was motivated to write the article was in social media, you put a video out there that showed one of these incidents going on, and you know, everybody would say it was a flashover, it was a backdraft, it was a smoke explosion. So that it was clear that there was really a misunderstanding about all these things, and you know, they're the critical events that we need to be aware of. We need to be able to understand how to identify the potential of them on the outside of the building as well as when we're on the interior side. Years ago with the IFSTA books, they taught us a lot about how to recognize those characteristics from the inside of the structure. And there's so much information we get from the outside on our read as we approach the building. One of the distinctions, and again, just to give credit to the stay true to the article, I've got some notes here. So if we're talking about the characteristics of the backdraft, basically the terminology that they use is, and this is a NIST definition, backdraft is a rapid deflagration or explosion following the introduction of O2 into a compartment filled with accumulated unburned fuels. Backdraft occurs within the decay stage. One of the things that we have to understand is when we look at the bell curves that we've got out there now on the stages of burning, the traditional one, which has got the big hump in there. And Peter, I don't know if you've got any of these graphics. I've got them on my side. If I share my screen, I can pull those up to show the differentiation. But nowadays with the modern furnishings, that traditional bell curve is a fuel limited circumstance. We've got fuel, it's burning off, it's got plenty of air. And when the fuel burns off, we go into that decay stage. When we talk about the modern one, we're talking about an enclosure compartment fire with today's furnishings. And so what happens is you're getting that growth, and then we take a dip into a decay stage because of the copious amounts of smoke volume that's being generated that dissipates all the oxygen, sucks all the oxygen in the room. And then it's waiting for a firefighter to open a door, break a window, create some type of ventilation on the perimeter to give it that air. And then you get that piston effect like you guys were talking about where you get a blast. And one of the things that about the only thing that I've been able to come up with to truly differentiate them, you know, NFPA says a fire burning in a confined area consumes all the oxygen, visible flames disappear, solid fuels smolder, and hot flammable gases accumulate in the room. Temperature increases, the gases expand, pressure builds, pulsating against doors and windows. And from outside, the building looks like it's breathing or throbbing. We've seen that puffing effect. And, you know, when you see those puffs start to narrow in timing, you know something's getting ready to happen. The question is, how many more puffs do you get before that trigger event occurs? And one of the things that the UL studies and NIST have taught us is get water, you know, sufficient water into those compartments as quickly as possible. If it's black smoke rolling out of a window, you know that's black fire in there. If it's very turbulent, it's got high heat and pressure behind it. There's no harm in putting a straight stream, solid stream in there. Do that transitional tack, cool that area down. It's going to make it that much better, and we may prevent the event from occurring to begin with, especially before we start putting folks inside, or even simultaneously these guys are going inside. One of the things with the backdraft is that you often hear about this pressure release that comes out that ends in a rolling fireball. And so that's one of the distinctions. With the smoke explosion, you generally don't see the fireball. So if you see the fireball and you've got sustained flame after that event, you're probably dealing with a backdraft situation. With the smoke explosion, that box that you were talking about, Bill, very much a smoke explosion circumstance. You've got a fire in an adjacent compartment. Smoke is migrating into another compartment adjacent to the fire room, or could be even distant away from it. The smoke explosion is considered a relatively cold smoke, even though it's about 1,000 degrees or less, versus the backdraft where the temperatures are 1,000 degrees and above. And what happens is we don't have to create a ventilation for the smoke explosion to occur. These are hot gases that are primed and ready to go. It needs that ignition source. And where it's getting its air from when it finally triggers and finds its ignition source is all the ambient air that's in the walls and in the void spaces and the ceilings and the floor space. And so again, almost impossible to identify when that's going to occur, and almost impossible to pick a point on the bell curve as to when that's going to occur, because it just has to have a accumulation of those gases, the right mixture, just waiting for ignition source to come by and trigger it. But between those two examples there, again, the one that sticks out for me is if you see that rolling fireball and sustained flame after that, after the incident, then it's after the trigger point rather, then it's likely a backdraft versus a smoke explosion.
Well, the good Professor Walsh and myself, along with some folks from UL, can you see this diagram? Okay, Nick, what Professor Dave and I determined is this is the revised time temperature curve.
Right.
Okay, so it burns, it becomes, it may even flash over, but then it becomes ventilation limited. Now, if you take a look at their diagram, it would lead you to believe that the fire will almost instantaneously intensify once there a ventilation, we open up a door. But we know from Professor Walsh that this time varies. It varies as much as 100 to 200 seconds. It varies. So Dave and I collaborated, and he actually has a great PowerPoint presentation on that. Dave, would we be able to show that, somehow post that with our viewers, where you examine that space in there? How long will it take the oxygen to mix in proper proportion with the unburned fire gases? Is there any way that you would be able to post that where our viewers could see that?
Sure, you refresh my memory what I titled it. I'll dig into my hard drive.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, Kevin, is it okay if I share my screen? And I've got those graphics. And
hell yeah, man, bring it on.
Just bear with me 1 second.
Sure, bring it on. Oh, while you're bringing it up, Nick, just want to say hey to Kehoe's, especially my buddy Dave Hibben, and I'm so bad with names. Mark Lighthill, Mark Lighthill, and Dave Hibben. Dave, you crazy old man from DC Engine 10, stayed there many a time. So if you guys are watching, and that's the thing about Kehoe's, you got a company that'll stick by you, and they listen to you. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so here was our traditional bell curve. We got our ignition, our growth, our fully developed, and then our decay stage. And again, this would be for a fuel limited fire. Our fuel is burning off. As soon as the fuel burns off, there's nothing more to burn. It goes into its decay stage. And then if we compare that with our modern furnishing ones in an enclosure, very much like your almost exact illustration there, we get our ignition. Our fire is underventilated because of the copious amounts of smoke that are being generated. Oxygen is depleted very quickly. We go into this lull, and like you said, we might notice a puffing on the outside. There's no telling what we're going to see, but if you slow down enough to take in the different characteristics that the building is telling you, there's a wealth of information there. And again, if you've got opportunity when it's in this mode to introduce water and start doing some surface cooling in the compartments, then you're going to bring those temperatures down. And we know from the studies, the temperatures come down from a dash of water hundreds of degrees in seconds. That's doing a wealth of good for any trapped survivable occupants that are on the inside. It's making that environment safer for the firefighters going inside. And we may be shutting this opportunity down for a trigger event to occur. Again, it's waiting for the fire department or somebody to open up a ventilation point. Could be a door, could be a window. That gets its air, that 100 to 300 second opportunity. If you're not getting water flowing and start to cool things to turn things around, it can take off and you get a very rapid increase. And that rapid increase, a lot of folks have lived to talk about it. It's when you're inside, you've got reasonable conditions, and then all of a sudden things started getting darker and darker. Then the heat started banking down from the ceiling. Next thing you know, you're on your bellies trying to figure out what's going on. Get that water flowing as soon as possible. Doesn't matter if it's coming from the inside or the outside. We just got to get the water flowing. Again, for folks that are aware of the transitional attack, we should all be aware of it nowadays. It is not a defensive operation. It's not an excuse to stay outside. It is actually an offensive tactic that supports the interior aggressive attack. So don't waste your time. Get that water flowing. Get those lines charged as quickly as possible. Pick the right line for the right fire that you're on. A lot of times we see, warehouse-sized houses, and that 1 3/4 is coming off pretty quickly for a pretty high volume fire. We're dealing with a square footage. It's much larger than your standard box houses that we see in most of our communities. Pull the right line. You can always bring that 1 3/4 behind you and use that for your versatility. But you need that big hit of water, get it under control as quickly as possible. And going back to we discussed. So here are some of the differences with this is our comparison chart with the backdraft and the smoke explosion. And again, you can see that they're relatively similar in a lot of different areas. Again, with the backdraft, it's under the decay stage. Again, is that early decay stage? Is it a later decay stage for us, given the volume of smoke that we've got available to us now? With
Nick, I don't want to stop you, but I'm still seeing the first graphic. That's all I'm seeing.
I'm sorry. Let me try to straighten that out here. Did you see the second bell curve?
No.
No, not yet.
Okay, let me go back and change that real quick.
There you go.
There it
That's
is.
the
Right
second one.
That's
there.
it.
So your ignition. Then again, we get into an early decay stage because of the volumes of smoke. Rapid increase if we give it that air and we haven't cooled that compartment down to prevent the trigger event from happening, and then starts to die down after that. Let me go back to the other one I had.
And then what the good professor and I did, we flattened out that that area between the two events because it doesn't happen necessarily instantaneously or near instantaneously.
Right.
Again, it depends upon and Dave had it all figured out. The concentration of gases, the distance of the fire to the ventilation opening. If it's a couch right inside the front door, yeah. When you open the door, it's going to take off. If it's a mattress back in a 5,000 square foot house, it may take much longer.
Right. And that's a good point. As we get in and we start advancing that hose line in, time is still going for the fire. It doesn't stop and give us an opportunity to get to our destination. It's still ticking away. And before you know it, 5 minutes has gone by, 3 minutes has gone by. That time goes by very quickly when you're in the heat of the moment. So again, use that reach of stream, get that stream flowing ahead of you, start cooling that environment as you're working your way down into it. Control that flow path as best you can. Lots of good things coming out of the research that we can be employing today in our fire departments, and hopefully that's going on. But again, here's the comparison chart. So again, the backdraft is in that decay stage. The smoke explosion, we're not really sure where that's going to occur. It could just be we get that right accumulation of gases that are at the right point with the gas air mixture, finds an ignition source, got enough air within the walls and the void spaces to promote that. Backdraft, oxygen is consumed. It becomes a vent limited fire. Smoke explosion, we're in a ventilation controlled fire. Again, that ventilation source is readily available to it within the walls and that dead space that we take for granted. Backdraft temperatures in excess of 1,000 degrees. And again, with the smoke explosion, considered a cold smoke, but again, that's 1,000 degrees and less generally. Backdraft, solid fuels, off gas, and expand. And in our smoke explosion, infiltration of significant volume of smoke into uninvolved compartments. So again, as you're working your way through and ventilating and open things up, if you got a high sense of heat, and hopefully everybody's using their thermal imaging cameras to get that heads up in advance, hey, I've got clear conditions, but I've got a tremendous amount of heat over here. Get that hose line in operation, cool that environment down very quickly. You'll take those temperatures down, buys you a little bit of time to be able to think things through and make something happen. Pressure increase with the backdraft. Same thing with your smoke explosion. They tend to say that the smoke explosion is usually more pressure coming off of that. And then again, the trigger point is an opening in the backdraft environment. Its missing element is the oxygen. We create a ventilation point through a door, window, wherever. That gives it its trigger. And then we get that rolling fireball with that pressure push behind it. And then again, with the smoke explosion, doesn't require us creating the ventilation. That ventilation is that leaking air within the building already. And let me go just one more here. So when we talk about our modern furnishings nowadays, so one of the studies that NIST had to do with a live burn, where they were burning the traditional legacy furniture and modern room furnishings. And you can see the difference. Over here on the legacy side, we were almost 30 minutes to get to a flashover state. Modern furnishings, we're getting to 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So we're rolling down the road by the time this is occurring. So again, we have to pay attention to our outside conditions to see, have we already gone past the flashover state? Is that place charged with gases and high heat, just waiting for us to make an opening? Should we introduce water from the outside perimeter somewhere first? Gets a cooling effect going. And again, the 360 using your thermal imaging camera as part of that is going to help you hone in on your fire location, the extent of the fire, where you've got your heat sources. And again, we all come back to the same thing. Get that water flowing as quickly as possible. Get it in the right places. Again, sometimes that starts on the outside. Sometimes that's a straight shot on the inside. You can move right in on it. And there's no reason that you couldn't support an inside operation with an outside line. We watch a lot of video where fire is ventilating from a window, which is a good thing for us if we're the interior attack line pushing in, but it's auto exposing on the outside of the building. It's rolling into the soffit space, up into the attic space. The longer we let that control, the further behind we're getting. So while we're putting out the compartment, we still have all this auto exposed fire that's now in the attic space above us. And we just really need to take control of the fire ground as quickly as possible. Water does that for us. So the sooner we make that happen, the sooner things start to shut down and we get things flowing in the right direction. And one thing that I wanted to add was we talk about, and again, it's great to be on a panel with people that have seen the way we did it back in the 70s and 80s, understand what's going on today, have learned the information from today. And it's night and day. And, we're wise enough to say, okay, we've got more information today. We've got better information today because the data points that can be collected today are so much better. But, if sometimes I think it's just, you're poking away at the folks that have those egos that, when you're saying you can put a stream in a window and get things started, then move in on it just as quickly, if not faster. Because again, I say that, it's a force multiplier, that outside stream in some situations when it can be applied, because you're doing so much good with a single line. And it's benefiting the crew that's going on the inside. It's benefiting the occupants that are on the interior side potentially. But it goes to the pride. People want to spend so much time and energy arguing how, they're manly or womanly enough to take the line going. Yes, a lot of times that's our go-to. But we've got so many tools right now and a better understanding now to understand how we can literally come on scene very quickly, assess what we've got, determine what we need to do. We've got a host of tactical options in our head, and we can make those things happen. So it's almost like I like to see the firefighter come on the fire scene. That field experience is critical to this job. But if you're not open-minded enough to take in the new information, then you're leaving yourself behind. Everything is evolving around the fire service. And to think that we could take a recruit school training on fire behavior and then not do anything with fire behavior training going forward for the rest of our career is just sort of asinine. There's so much has changed. There's so much you can do. We see the examples day in and day out of where a crew effectively uses an outside line, gets the operation going. They immediately gain that control. The crew goes inside, and what used to take 20 minutes to put out, you're getting it knocked out in 5 minutes. And you can't tell me that's not good for the occupants inside, because again, you're improving those conditions so drastically on the inside. So that's kind of my take on some of that stuff. Maybe you guys have got some other thoughts there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask our brothers in Ohio, and it has to do with construction. You mentioned I-joists, I believe, didn't you, Chief?
Yes, sir.
In your jurisdiction or in your state, is it required to have a drywall ceiling in the basement?
No, it's not. I mean, quite frequently they are open currently. And you know, we're seeing that more and more, just to the shortcuts and the cost of materials. They're not as likely to finish them.
And
Do they have any, Chief, do they have any requirements for finishing within a certain distance of the heating plant, the oil burner, or the gas furnace?
No, some of those are still open. The code is currently changing in that direction, but no, not currently.
We just the other day, our area, we've got a ton of new construction coming in, and I recently we were heading back from a run, took my crew, we swung into a new subdivision that's being developed, and those pre-engineered floor joists, it's amazing. Now you see they look like Swiss cheese because they're running ductwork through them, and it's crazy that this stuff is even allowed to happen. But I mean, I guess somebody smarter than me knows that they won't fail up to a certain point. But yeah, it's just something that we're going to deal with as time goes on.
Oh, brother, man, if you take a look at those Underwriters Laboratory, Chicago Fire Department tests of lightweight engineered floor assemblies, holy smokes, man, 6 minutes. Now, they did say, or proven, that even a common drywall ceiling with penetrations for recess lights and HVAC registers can hold the fire out for as much as 20 minutes compared to like 6 minutes without it. Captain Mike, I understand you've been to a fire or two in your career, so I'm going to guess that you have some notable experience with something that you didn't quite expect or predict that you could share with us, sir.
Well, I worked with some phenomenal firemen when I was a fireman in Spanish Harlem in Ladder 43. And we went to a fire in a place called Schaumburg Plaza. And I know the professor probably remembers Schaumburg Plaza. We lost 7 people at that fire. It was on a Sunday morning. And it was a wind-driven fire. We had no names for it back then. I think it was 87. It was 86 or 87. We had no names for it back then. But I remember I was working. I was on the inside team. I had the can, and Kirk Lester was the irons man, and Jimmy the Greek Skarkas was the lieutenant. And the apartment door on the 34th floor, the fire was on its 36-story building. The fire was on the 34th and 35th floor, and it was in the L line of apartments. And it was because the compactor was around the L line of apartments, and we could do a whole talk on this, but it wasn't built to New York City code because it was a federally funded building. And the apartments caught on fire, and we're going down this hallway with 2.5s, and the apartment door is chattering in the wind, and the peephole is burnt through and there's fire coming out of it, and the lock is burnt through and there's fire coming out of it. And we're wearing rubber boots and 3/4 coats and no hoods. And I remember in the smoke, I hear somebody say, "You big donkey son of a gun." And they didn't quite say it that nicely. "You better hit this iron fast." Now, I thought it was Kirk Lester. And he told me after I told this story on one of the Getting Salty things that it was Jimmy the Greek who said, "You better hit it, you big donkey, you know what." And we forced the door. But my lieutenant, Jimmy Skarkas, who became a chief on the FDNY, was just a smart man. We were fighting this fire, two and a halves. And once the door came open a little bit, the fire came out, drew us back down the hall. We tried it again. Same thing. We forced the adjoining apartment door, got in there, breached a hole in the wall, put the 2.5 in there. Fire was out in 3 minutes. And nobody ever talked about it. And it wasn't because we didn't have, as Nick said, the data points. We didn't have the communication. We didn't have the stuff that went on after that. And then people came up further in the FDNY, people like Chief Dunn and everything else. And I've had quite a few fires where there were things. I had one of the largest fires in New York City history, the Hotel St. George, but that was an 18th alarm. And it was all radiant heat because the building next door to this vacant hotel that was on fire, they were sending companies in, pick a floor, any floor you want. You've got at least 2 apartments on fire on there. You have that floor. And again, it's understanding the phenomena. If you are not a student of this service, as our friend Patty Brown, God rest his soul, said, you can never train enough for a job that might kill you. Okay? Understand these things, research these things, show video of these things to your men and women, and practice understanding this stuff. There is so many different things that we can do to learn about these phenomena. The oxygen, the fuel, what is it? Is it a smoke explosion? What's going to happen? How are you going to survive this? How are your people going to survive this? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to protect yourself? Okay? I still love, and it's a horrible incident, but I love the gentleman who was one of the nozzlemen at the Hackensack Ford. He was the guy who survived. I think he was an African-American gentleman, and he said he was up in the attic space, and it was starting to get hot, and he rolled over on his back and opened up the line over his head, and the water came down and was burning him. And he said, I got to get out of here. And he got himself, they got themselves out of there, and then the thing came down, and he forced his way out. And how he survived is amazing. But just looking at that, understanding what this guy did to save his own life, and how our brothers and sisters have saved themselves. Take time to study this stuff, to learn this stuff, and to know this stuff. Because the one time it happens, if you don't have some kind of idea what's coming at you, you are going to be hit like a freight train.
And time will pass you by. Speaking of time, we're on a roll here, man, and we're all having a good time. And we don't have a hard and fast stop at 2 o'clock, do we, Peter? Can we keep going?
You got it, Bill.
All right, brother. All right. I'm going to relate an experience that I had. 1980, a high school, windowless, as a lot of them are in the Miami area. Our medic unit had been, I was on engine 30. Our medic unit, Rescue 30, had gone back and forth at a hospital, could smell smoke. Now, this is on a Sunday night, early Monday morning. So when the custodian came in to unlock the high school early on the Monday morning, we get the call for a fire. Vandals had broken into the library learning center, a massive room full of books, no computers back then. This is 1980. And they had stacked up the books. It almost looked like, the burning of the books back in the 30s. So we got in there with an 1.5-inch hose line. And of course, don't open the nozzle until you see the fire, Nick. Okay, remember? Don't open it. Oh, God forbid you open that nozzle before you see the fire.
Only put the wet stuff on the red stuff.
Right. So, but the red stuff was this massive pile of books, and it was glowing like charcoal briquettes. And then slowly it started to build and build and build. And then it completely ignited up over our heads. That was all. And we never opened the nozzle. And this is back, Mike, when you didn't have hoods, you didn't have ear flaps, your wrists we got so burnt. And first of all, we could have been blown to kingdom come when we forced the door. And we crawled in underneath that thermal layer of heat. Knowing what I know now today, man, we would have been doing what Nick had mentioned. Open that friggin' nozzle and let her rip. Anytime you feel any kind of appreciable heat in our state-of-the-art protective clothing today, open that friggin' nozzle and cool the overhead. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm going to ask everybody to kind of weigh in on some of these pictures. You talked about pressure, Nick. You talked about pressure, and it's a principle of physics. If you heat a gas, and air is a gas, it wants to expand. If it's contained, it can't expand. So what does it do? It raises in pressure. So, Peter, can we show the first picture? This is from Chicago, and I was not there. So this is all supposition. This is strictly supposition. All right, we've got ourselves a two-story taxpayer, and some of the businesses on the first floor are occupied, some are not. Second floor is your typical residences, apartments. Okay, next picture. All right, so the fire originated in one of these stores and got up into the space between the ceiling and the floor, the common ceiling, space between the row of stores and the floor above the ceiling, below the floor level. Okay, and you can see that it's starting to get angry. Go ahead. Okay, go back to the previous picture for a second, if you could, Peter. I want you to notice something. I want you to notice these roll down security gates here. Okay, next picture. Okay, pressure is starting to build. Now, again, this is supposition on my part. Also, I see, looks like there were floor joists there at one time, but I believe the fire followed the plumbing stacks because there was no fire here on the second floor, and there wasn't much fire on the first floor, but it found its way into that cock loft, and we'll see the pressure starting to build. Go ahead. All right, now, you've got a firefighter up here. We're looking at the Bravo, Charlie.
That Delta right there, that one.
Right. Delta, yeah. Delta, Charlie. And he's going up there to examine it. You don't see a lot of smoke coming out of there right now. Keep going. All right, there's your roll down security gates.
Wow.
Blew off, hit truck 39.
Bravo side.
On the Bravo side. Now, guys, there's no fire in there. As we look, there's no fire in there. So, was it smoke? Was it well, it was pressure. Yeah. And it blew those security gates off.
Next picture, you'll see the
Go ahead.
pressure behind it. Now you can see over on the engine, they blew the doors. They didn't just fall out of the building. They blew off the building and hit the truck.
Okay. Next one, Pete. Go ahead, Pat. Or Matt.
All right. So as you can see, this is the Charlie side. And you can see down below all the walls, the rafters and everything, all the wood and the floor, wall joint, we call them bearing
studs for the interior walls.
And the windows. And the windows.
And the windows, there's no fire there. You don't see any smoke damage, fire damage, anything. But all that brick and everything have completely blown off the side of the Bravo, Charlie side. Bravo, the doors blew off. Now you see the Charlie side blew off down below. Up top, it's got some damage, but it's still intact. Next slide. Okay, now remember, this is the door on the Delta side where the firefighter went into, and he was opening the door. Notice above the door, going all the way across the building, you can now see the crack that's forming from one end all the way to the other end. And down below, you can see some of the water and everything where it came out. Go ahead to the next slide.
Wait a second, 1 second. Also, above the door to the left and right
Right,
are the cockloft vents.
the vents.
Yes.
Correct.
The
Yes,
vents,
Mike.
and you can see the thermal damage to them, that the fire got up, it bypassed, it was up in the cockloft. It got into the cockloft in this one.
Correct. Very good point there. Next one will show.
But the key
Now-
word
oh,
is,
oh, back up.
Mike, you said bypass, because it looks like, as you can, well, let's go back one, Peter. Go back one.
Okay, now, that was 2. Go forward 1. Right there. Okay, now you see the smoke out of the vents that you're talking about.
Yep,
And you can see how much more violent it's getting with how dark across the rooftop there.
Yep.
And again, next one shows, now we'll show this one. And this photographer was ace on. You can still see everything crumbling in this picture when it actually all gave way. And if you look where the door was, you can see a couple studs there and they're not burnt.
Yep.
But you still have the heavy smoke up top in the cockloft. Next picture.
and I'm wondering, in this one, was this one of those blown-in insulations? Because I have had numerous fires in older buildings where they've put the blown-in celluloid paper type insulation up in the attic space to prevent the heat leaving the building, and they've never boxed out around the lighting fixtures, the ceiling fixtures in this, and that's where I've had a lot of fires, 3rd, 4th alarms in the city of New York.
Guys, the words green and sustainable are not always the firefighters' friends. That cellulose insulation that Captain Mike's talking about actually has a higher R rating than blown-in fiberglass, but it has a propensity for smoldering combustion, which yields tremendous amount of toxic inflammable carbon monoxide. Yeah, this photographer's name is Gordon Nord. He is got a great talent because he's not just he looks at fires through the eyes of a firefighter because he is one. But Gordon Nord got the money shot of the millennia for these pictures. Do we have any more?
Yeah.
Matt?
And you can also see here, and this picture proves it right off the bat. You see all the wall studs down below. They're not burnt. They're not scorched. Nothing down there. But
Except
look
the
up
one-
top and look at the raceway. You can see inside the raceway here how it's
Yeah.
all
Chase.
burnt up. The chase.
Plumbing
Hi,
stack?
Chase. Yep.
There you go, my brother. Anybody else want to weigh in on something here?
I think we're good, Bill.
Okay,
ahead.
and then
There's one more
One
that
more.
shows the picture here. And this just shows both sides, and you can see down below, and even on the second floor on the Delta side, the Charlie side and the Delta side being exposed from the fractures of the brick and the explosion down below, that there was no fire below that up in the cockloft, and then the smoke down below.
But it looks like that truss space between the 2 floors.
Correct.
Is
It's dark.
charred.
Is
So
very
the fire
dark
was
right
in there and followed the raceways up to the cockloft.
Correct.
Mike, I couldn't agree more.
Yep.
I couldn't agree. And I got to tell you, this is what a tribute to the Chicago Fire Department. They have paid the price dearly for losing firefighters in building collapses and going all the way back to the stockyards years ago. And they've learned how to operate outside of the collapse zone. So again, I want to thank Gordon Nord for those pictures. And we're going to wrap this thing up. I want to thank our friends at Key Hose. Remember, take the key challenge. You can't kink key hose. I want to give a real shout out to our special guests, Chief Ed Myers and Captain Cody Martin. We're going to keep you in our thoughts and prayers. And when I come back to Cincinnati, I hope you invite me back. You allowed me to teach there one time. I'm a cheap date. You just have to furnish lunch, okay? And I'll
You're
come back.
always welcome.
I will come back and hopefully to a repaired fire station. Professor, God bless you. And I've missed you. We haven't talked in a while. Nick, Bobby Halton was absolutely spot on. You are exactly how he described you. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you.
Captain Mike, thank you so much. And Matt, brother,
Thank you, sir.
thank you, my brother. Okay, till next month. God bless everybody, and may he keep you safe.
Thank you, guys.
Guys.